But in terms of spiders, I mean, I've unfortunately had one horrible incident because I have a big phobia. There was one sort of like about to crawl up my leg in a changing room in front of the whole squad. I was about to speak, or when I was speaking, and these guys just freaked out next to me, and I looked at, well, actually didn't look down, I just ran. So that's my experience. Thankfully, they're not crawling about everywhere. We've only seen sort of one or two others, and they've not been huge, thank goodness, because I'd be catching the next flight home. Generally, there's not.
Welcome here on Sandy Bay Media for today's episode. We're doing a bit of a special one where we're going to be talking about something outside of football. We've got Amy Crawford. Amy. We've got the other Amy. Jess and Beth. And we're going to have a chat about their move to Melbourne and seeing how they've gone. But before, let's get an introduction of where they've come from. Amy?
So I was born in Penrith in Sydney, but I grew up in New Zealand, and this year I've moved to Melbourne.
Excellent. Amy?
I was born in South Africa, then me and my sister, we moved to New Zealand. We played soccer there for like 12 years and then moved here this year.
And Beth?
I'm from Nottingham, like East Midlands in England. Came here like 7 weeks ago on Monday. So that's when I arrived, played there my whole life. Did a few stints in other places, but enjoying life in Melbourne now.
Awesome. Well, let's get a bit of a look and see how you found Melbourne so far. Starting off with you, Beth, how have you found it coming from literally on the other side of the world?
I love it. I think these guys that are on this call with me as well help because we get on really well, don't we? Housemates, and obviously Amy spends time with us as well. But the team itself is amazing. But like I was mentioning earlier, and in the other Zoom that I did, I think the culture is so different to home, but in a good way. It's sort of everything I was expecting and more. People just really enjoy life. People are more open. Just to speak to, I've made so many friends. And it's just really hard not to like people from Melbourne. So the culture's good, the football's good. I'm really enjoying it.
That's brilliant to hear that. And Amy Crawford, yourself?
I absolutely love it here in Melbourne. It's definitely the people that have made it everything for me. Because I'm doing school this year, so the teachers have been really helping me out. I've made quite a few friends at school and for football. I think there's just different opportunities for like work, uni and football. And so, yeah, just absolutely love it here.
That's awesome to hear that. And the twins? What about your thoughts?
I think I really love Melbourne here. I think it's also the people that like make me love it so much, but it's a lot different to New Zealand as well, which is also why I love it. But what about you, Amy? Yeah, I agree. It's definitely the people. Like moving away from your family can be quite hard, but when you're with the right people, it makes it a lot easier as well.
No, I completely agree. I mean, we've got the triplets at the bottom, and then we've got Amy, so it definitely makes it easier when the people are there. Well, we've got a few viewer questions, and I think the big one that everyone asks is are there big spiders everywhere, and are there kangaroos in the streets? Do you want to fill our viewers in that?
To be fair, no. I mean, there was one really cool. We went camping a couple of weeks ago, and we sort of like went through a road that split through like a wooded area, and we saw just like in a natural sort of habitat, we saw loads of kangaroos like crossing the road. That was amazing. There was just hundreds when you look left and right. But in terms of spiders, I mean, I've unfortunately had one horrible incident because I have a big phobia. There was one sort of like about to crawl up my leg in a changing room in front of the whole squad. I was about to speak, or when I was speaking, and these guys just freaked out next to me, and I looked at, well, actually didn't look down, I just ran. So that's my experience. Thankfully, they're not crawling about everywhere. We've only seen sort of one or two others, and they've not been huge, thank goodness, because I'd be catching the next flight home. Generally, there's not loads of snakes, loads of spiders or kangaroos anywhere, which is I'm thankful about.
Fair enough. And Amy, Jess, and the other Amy, what's been your experience with the wildlife in Australia?
Do you guys want to go?
Oh, no, you go.
Okay. Well, because I'm living out in like the countryside in like Melbourne, out like towards like Wonthaggi, Phillip Island, Inverloch that way. There's actually been quite a few kangaroos that I've seen on the way to training. Yeah, they're actually beautiful. You see them like on the sides of the road, like sort of in the bush. But in regards to spiders, I haven't seen any huntsmen yet, and I'm not looking forward to seeing any huntsmen. I've seen like white tails, a few of them in my room, but otherwise, I don't like them.
I think for like the wildlife here is a lot different to New Zealand. We're not really like in the countryside too much, so we haven't seen like kangaroos and all that, but we do have like a lot more different species of birds compared to New Zealand. It's like a lot louder for birds, which is really cool.
Good alarm clock.
We do a lot of sort of sanctuary places or like farm stuff as well. So being able to feed, we fed some kangaroos and stuff like that. We've got some really nice photos. That is something like I went to a rugby game not long ago, last week I think, and I saw a possum just like sat under a tree eating, and I was like, oh my goodness, wow. And I was taking a photo and everyone was like, what, that is so boring. And I was like, I don't see that in England. So I was freaking out about these things sat under a tree, and everyone was like, that's so embarrassing, let's move on.
That's great to hear that. He's like, oh, I'll just take a photo of a possum because and I was like, okay, so no, thank you for sharing that. And the other thing I sort of wanted to look at, or some of the other questions we got from our viewers, was looking at the cultural difference between yourselves here in Melbourne now versus back home. So Beth, for you in England, and Amy and Jess obviously being in New Zealand. So Beth, maybe you could start us off just looking at some of the cultural difference between England and here.
Did you say me? Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, I sort of touched on it earlier, but the way of life is very different. Obviously, I think Victoria itself is bigger than the whole of the UK, but the UK, I think, has 5 times the amount of people than Australia. So although when I'm in England, I've not noticed the difference of it being a lot less busy or anything like that, but it's just everything's a bit of a rush. Everything is busy with a lot of people, a lot of expectation. And the culture's just here is much more relaxed. You can feel it as soon as you land. People are just living a bit more freer. I think the space helps, and just the beach culture, and just have a nice barbecue and stuff like that. It's our weather doesn't permit that a lot of the time as well. So I think the weather definitely helps, but like the cultural thing must have. It's really nice to be here. That's the main difference for me. That people just seem a little bit happier.
No, I completely agree. As you mentioned earlier, it's a little bit more relaxed here, a bit of the island culture.
Yeah.
And Amy Crawford, just yourself, you're still in high school, as you mentioned. What's sort of been like some of the difference that you found as someone who's still in high school between Auckland or New Zealand and here in Melbourne?
I think in New Zealand, in high school, it's very much you either get your work done or you're one of the kids that kind of just chill it out, like finish high school, whatever, maybe go to uni. And like pretty closed up with talking about things, unless you're in like friend groups. But definitely here in Melbourne, it's very much, everyone's very open with everyone, like in your classrooms and everything. Subjects that you wouldn't really normally talk about with your friends they're like open discussions, and you hear it when you're walking around. I think, and everyone seems a lot friendlier. I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing, but like, it's you can like go up and ask for like, where's the classrooms or where's the bathrooms, and doesn't matter like the personality or anything, they'll tell you. They'll be like, oh, it's just down there, down the corridor. But yeah.
Oh, that's something interesting to hear, and just to sort of get a perspective on, because obviously someone who's grown up here in Australia for a long time, you just don't notice little things like that. And Amy and Jess, what about yourselves? I know you just came out of school a couple of years ago, but what have you noticed? Sorry, what are some of the differences you've noticed?
I think, like Beth said before, everyone's just living their life to enjoy it here. If no one's really rushing around or like focusing and stressing about work is what I noticed. I noticed back home everyone's like rushing around trying to just focus on work. They just stress a lot, and I just feel like everyone here is just living life to the fullest as well.
To hear, it's honestly, like I said to Amy before, we just don't know